Jihan, and today you have joined us on Raising Resilient Minds. I'm so excited because my guest is my big sister, Aquilah. Say hi to everyone, Aquilah.
Hi, everyone. As she said, I'm Aquilah Ahmed. I'm the big sister, and I'm excited about being here today.
So, without going through her entire resume because it's quite lengthy, Aquilah's day job is that she's an engineer and she does lots of different tasks as an engineer. So, we won't go into that completely. But her other side jobs and activities is that she's actually certified in being able to teach mindfulness. And she spends so much of her time and efforts in learning how to increase her own resiliency as well as help others to find theirs as well. So, Akilah, if you want to just kind of share a little bit of that resume in your words of kind of what you feel like your second job is.
That's a good. I'm a jack of all trades, but something that is very dear to me and something that is extremely important in my life, especially in my daily practice, is the quality of my thoughts, my mindset. And I've been working for over 15, 16 years on really being intentional about what is the quality of my mind? How do I feel? How do I show up in the world? And I have regular practice that I'm constantly learning and growing in, where I've become a subject matter expert in myself and making sure that I'm always conscientious and self aware of what's going on in this mind. So I'm also aware of what's going on physically and emotionally within my body. And so I'm here to share and answer any questions that Dr. Abdul Haq has for me. And like I said, again, I'm just really excited to be here and share some of this information because I know that it's something that's extremely important, especially now and especially with our young people.
Definitely, definitely. And I know, just kind of taking people back, since we are sisters, sometimes it's important to help people better understand. We didn't necessarily grow up in a traditional household, and our mother is a high school counselor. So I should just say school counseling, right? She's done college as well as high school and middle school. And our father is a physician. And so growing up, we actually had the opportunity to learn a lot more about the mind and the brain. So, Akila, what are some of your favorite memories about learning about the brain as growing up?
Well, I love math and science. I always have loved math and science. So some of the things that just are endearing to me about what we learn from both our parents, especially our father, when it comes to the brain, are the different parts, like learning about the hippocampus, learning about the thalamus, learning about the amygdala, seeing pictures very early on of where these sections of the brain are located, how they function, how they impact how our thoughts, how they impact our actions, and feeling really. At the time, there were days where we were like, we don't want to do this. We want to be outside playing. But now, and once I became an adult and I was applying a lot of what I had learned, I realized how important that foundation was that they instilled it in us early on, and actually being able to apply those things now. So certain things that like maybe some of my coworkers or friends don't understand, when I hear these things from whether I'm listening to a podcast or watching something on YouTube, I'm understanding when they say the amygdala and when they're talking about fear. I'm just like, oh, I know a little bit about this. And so what happens is that it strengthens my curiosity even more to go a bit deeper and do my own investigative work to find out more about how do I work, how do others work. And I just think that it's important to instill that foundation at any point of your life. We were fortunate, and I'm very grateful to our parents for teaching us so early, but you can learn this at any stage of your life. And it's so important to understand the science behind how you function, because that gives you tools and resources to be able to do something about what you're going through.
Definitely. And we should give the disclaimer that we were homeschooled for a period of our lives. So our education looked a lot different as well. Akilah actually was homeschooled until high school. And so she got a lot of that extra education, which helped her throughout life. And I completely agree with you. When I was in high school and I would have situations where I'm not understanding a little bit of my anxiety and things like that, like what's going on in my body, I could actually remember those lessons that we received talking about fight or flight, understanding how these seed stones in my brain work, about how making me want to eat more or crave foods or making me want to fight or become angry or just dealing with my feelings. And so it didn't necessarily make it just go away because I was still not mature enough to be able to process all of that information, but it just made me realize, you know what? I'm not alone, right? Because this isn't just me that it's happening to, this is my brain, right? And so I feel like that was very helpful as I navigated different spaces. And of course, it provoked me to also want to investigate and learn a lot more. And hence, that's why I'm here with you today, because I really believe that the more that we help build that resiliency, that children are really able to grow and thrive. And so, obviously you are a parent and you've adopted a lot of people along the way, are my niece's friends and things like that. And, I've watched them go through a lot of different things, but you're able to step in and kind of give them some tools or mechanisms to kind of deal with some of these stressful situations. So, can you give us an example or kind of, some of those tips that you might want to add or offer to our listeners?
Well, one of the things that I think is the simplest to do is pause. Take a pause. It's a free thing to do. You can do it anywhere. When you can kind of tell when you're getting riled up and when your body's kind of getting on high alert. There are a lot of different signals, and sometimes you just have to take a pause, just stop, take a deep breath, and then that kind of resets where you have a moment where you can get a little bit of clarity about what's going on. A lot of times, especially an example, testing. Our young people have to go through testing. A lot of young people have test anxiety and don't even realize that they have that. And what happens is, as Dr. Abdul said, that fight or flight, your body literally thinks it's running from like a bear or tiger, and hopefully no. If you are, you do need that system to work. But if you're just sitting there taking a test, pause for a second. Social media, you see something that somebody said something bad about you, pause for a second, especially on social media, and ask yourself, am I true? Am I okay? Am I in a life or death situation? 9 times out of 10, the answer is going to be no. Once you take that deep breath, we're talking about breathe in through the nose, that and then out through the mouth. This is, well, really a great way to calm that nervous system, to calm that fight or flight. So the frontal cortex can kick in, the executive part of the brain can kick in and say, hey, because the limbic system, fight or flight, it's reacting, it's doing its job. There's nothing wrong with it. And the executive brain, it's just a little bit behind that limbic system. And you want that to happen. If you touch a hot stove, you want the limbic to kick in immediately and say, hot stove, go, action. And then, the executive brain will kick in later, and then you can do whatever you need to do at that point. But in this situation where you are not in a true life in danger event, you want your executive brain to be able to make some decisions for you. So this pause, this allows the time for that executive brain to kick in. It's a little bit more rational. And so you'll be able to assess, oh, I'm not in a life or death situation. I might be mad, especially with social media posts. Someone said something bad about you, but it gives you the opportunity to get into the real reality of what's going on. Okay. And then make a conscientious decision on what you want to do from there. If you want to roll out on the post and then suffer the repercussions of whatever comes from that, so be it. But if you want to perhaps ignore this post, just do a delete, you have that option. It gives you options versus you just become reactionary and then you just do whatever and later regret what you did, versus you're empowered. You don't let someone else or something else take outside of you take control. You put yourself back into a position where you have control, and now you can do something that's more aligned with who you want to be. How do you want to show up? So that's an example.
That's great, great advice. And we see that so often. And I tell people all the time, if we teach more of our children how to pause, how to take a breath, how to step back, then imagine how many fewer deaths would occur. Fight, arguments that result in words that cannot be taken back. Even in our own families, right? As a parents, we have to model the behaviors that we want our children to see. And it's not always easy. Trust me. I'm one of those people who's like, and I'm like, oh, stop. What did you learn? What do you know? Right? Because even though I have the knowledge, sometimes it's very difficult. And I have to make myself pause, take a deep breath before I react oftentimes. And it's not doesn't mean that you will get it perfect every time. She just said she spent 15 years working on this, right? But it's something that even myself, I've gotten better and better and better at because I have 3 children, you guys, and they like to test all of my nerves, like every single one of them. And so sometimes they're looking for that reaction. And that's another thing we have to realize. A lot of times people are wanting you to react. Sometimes it just brings them pleasure, which is so beyond me, but it's the reality of situations, especially I was speaking with another guest and we were talking about middle school girl drama. And to me, it's all about, can I get a reaction out of somebody? And as long as we're reacting, then they're winning. And so we have to teach our young children how to pause and step back, how to become a little bit more resilient, right? Because resiliency is, to me, is kind of like that, a rubber band, right? When you're pulling it, it moves, it's flexible. But if you don't allow that education and those skills and those tools, then your child's a piece of cardboard. Well, why don't we say cardboard? We'll say concrete, right? Straight concrete, right? A concrete rod that isn't, you're not able to bend. And so it's important that they learn some of these skills. So your morning routine, I like to often share with people. For someone like yourself, what does your morning routine look like?
This is, I, like she said before, and this doesn't even exist. Perfect. I'm not perfect. And I am okay with not being perfect. But when I am more aligned with what my plans are, I start my morning with a 10, sometimes 5 minutes. It really depends on the day, but 10 to 15-minute meditation. I like to do a sitting meditation that involves reflection on breathing and body scanning. And sometimes I use a guided meditation. There's no sponsors here, so hopefully it's okay to mention this. But Headspace is one that has some good guided meditations that are very simple. And you can also just do this yourself, find a YouTube video and then use that as a way to kind of practice. But sitting, guided meditation, a meditation focused especially on deeper breathing, because breathing is just a really great way to calm the central nervous system and kind of get it reset. And so morning meditation, hydration. A lot of folks, sometimes y'all are mad because you're dehydrated. And so you're coming off of a night fast of not drinking, and then you wake up and then you just get to going. And it's like, wait a minute, your body needs, we're what, 70 something percent water? Yeah. We need some water. Don't start with coffee, tea, start with some water, and then you can move on into whether you drink some other things.
And not to cut you off, but it's so important what you just said, because you actually do your body so much, like it's so much more beneficial to not start with caffeine,
right? Because
your body actually hasn't even had an opportunity to increase your energy.
Right.
And so you start it with that. And so it's almost like, blocking the body's efforts and what it actually needs. So that's why you see a lot of people who are fatigued after they drink caffeine. They're crashing because you didn't allow the body to actually just kind of start itself. And I see so many teenagers who are drinking coffee and energy drinks in the morning. And I'm like, do not do that. Yeah, you may be a little sluggish. Hydrate yourself first with water, and you'll actually see that improvement. And Aquilah and I don't know how often she does that. So I go back and forth, but we do some intermittent fasting. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to go into a whole talk about that, but it's so like eye-opening when I started doing it, because I realized if I wake up and I just drink water and or something with no sugar, no calories, nothing to, trigger that, system, right? I continue to fast. I'm so much more alert. Mm-hmm. And of course, eating smaller meals when you come off of that, otherwise you crash. Right. And I laugh all the time because I'll say, you know what, I shouldn't have ate all that food this morning, or I should have just fasted this morning, and my mind would be so much clearer.
Well, when you eat, the blood rushes to the stomach because it's trying to assist in a digestive process. So if you eat a huge meal so early and your body's not necessarily ready for that, you're taking resources away from your brain activity, and then you're using some outside caffeine to try. It's a cycle that, and if you have to just, it's timing. Everything is timing. And that's why morning, having a ritual is very, maybe you don't want to call it a ritual, maybe a regimen or something like that, is extremely important because you are being very intentional about setting the tone for the day. And you can be 4 years old and have a regimen. And it's, people have to understand this is something that you have the power to do. It's just kind of educating on yourself on what works for you. Another thing, gratitude. Before, as I sometimes I'm rolling out of the bed, okay? I'm at that age where some life changes are happening. So the nighttime rest doesn't happen and I'm literally rolling out of bed. But I will roll out of that bed and then I will stand up. I look to the sky, look wherever you want to look. But I look to the sky and I say 3 thank yous. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. I may not want to get out of that bed, but I'm setting the tone. I'm being very intentional about being in a state of gratitude. And I forgot to mention that. So that's what I do, whether I roll out of the bed or hop out of the bed. I do say those 3 thank yous every morning. And then, then I go into the hydrate first and then meditation. And so that's kind of how I try to start my mornings. And some days, know that all of those things don't happen, but that gratitude, that happens literally almost every morning, because what happens is, I don't know, there's something about when you're like, thank you, you naturally like say thank you.
Smile.
You
Thank
smile.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. No,
It
yeah.
doesn't go,
Thank you very
right?
much. Thank you very much.
So you naturally like smile. And what happens is that smile actually starts to get the endorphins or serotonin, whatever. This is the doctor. But the feel good things that go on in your body start happening. And that's really, really important because this is the beginning of the day. And so you are intentionally putting out that I'm grateful, I'm gracious, and I'm gonna go through the day in a state of grace as best that I can. And so
Mhm.
those regiments are really, really important. And it's something that you have the power to do. All of you.
No, definitely, definitely, definitely. And one thing, is that creating these types of patterns for your child helps them to develop these skills, right? So even if it's something that you may be struggling with right now, it's something that you can start with your own child. And if they start at a very young age, they'll be used to that. We can't just wait and be reactionary for everything. So patients will come into the office, oh, they have anxiety, they have all these other things. And I'm like, well, hey, you can use this app. I have used Headspace, the Calm app, Smiling Minds, and there's a few other ones, right? And I'll tell this child to use it every day, not just when you're having a crisis, because then you actually learn the skill yourself, right? So if you're actually using it every day, then it comes second nature when you encounter that anxiety or that feeling that you're having. And so we have to understand that repetition is so important with developing our minds. And, I think that many of our lives are just chaotic. There's like no consistency and it's all over the place. And so even if you guys are like, oh my God, we have this sport, and we have this, and we have this, and we have tons of things, in my household, we're all over the place sometimes. Every day, every week is different. But we are like, you know what? We're all going to pray together. Or we're going to do this. Or, you know what? Let's take the phones away. Whatever might be the case to help us reground ourselves into, that calming, situation. And so I think that it's something that's really important. So in terms of mindfulness, because I know that's one of your additional certifications and something that you practice, but also help teach other people about. So can you just share a little bit about what mindfulness means to you, or what do you feel like it is?
Mindfulness for me is being aware of yourself, being aware of what's going on around you as well, but it's being very intentional about your thoughts, your feelings, and not trying to change them necessarily, just being aware. Um, Mindfulness, like for example, mindful eating, you're deciding that while you're, first of all, whatever it is that you prepare to eat, you're going to be mindful of that. And your why on why you're mindful can vary. It could be I want to eat, I want to be healthy, I want to lose weight. It could be all kinds of things, but you're being very intentional about that preparation of the food. And then once you're sitting eating, you mindful eating happens, it's like you don't be on your phone, don't watch television, sit and be mindful as you're chewing the food, the taste, the smell of the food, the colors of the food. You just always trying to intentionally be aware versus being on autopilot. And so when I think, for me, when I think of mindfulness, it's that underlying awareness where we're always trying to intentionally be engaged with what's going on with ourselves internally and also with what is going on around us. And the reason that I think that's important is if you're just on autopilot all the time, then it's really easy to get very caught up in the chaos of society. And let's be honest, it's strange out here. And so you probably don't want to just get caught all up in it. I mean, if you get on social media and you're doing the numbing thing, do it, but set a timer. That let's not 4 hours later wonder, like when the lady comes on, oh, you're still scrolling. Like you don't, there are days where that's going to happen, but be like, take the pause. Okay, do I want to just get caught up in this? Ask yourself that. Or is it, I'm going to set a timer on this. I'm going to set a 15-minute timer. And then after that goes off, I'm going to put it down and I'm going to go do something else. That's being mindful, just being intentional about what it is that you're doing, being intentional about your thoughts, being intentional about how you're reacting to your own thought. If I'm thinking going down this rabbit hole of darkness, pause. Why am I telling myself this story? Is it helpful? And if you just want to feel that way, like there's days where I just want to feel sorry for myself. At least I'm aware what I'm doing so I can change it up later. I'm not going to beat myself up. That's just what I wanted to do in that moment. But it's always being mindful, always being conscientious. It's to the best of your ability so you can have clarity as to what's going on, and then you can make some decisions for yourself. Don't let these folks out here take over. That's not probably the wisest, because you know yourself better than other people do. And so it's very important to always be in a state where you can pause for a second, reset, and have a sense of just be grounded in, hey, okay, what is it that I want to do now? How do I want to feel right now? Like we can even flip our thoughts about something, where we can flip how we feel about situations. So that's mindfulness for me.
Yeah, I love it. I've also done some additional courses and things on mindfulness, and I think that's a great way to describe it. And one thing that I love sharing with, hopefully we have some teens even listening, because she's talking directly to you. This isn't just for parents. This is for our teens who can take in this information and do these exact things. Because when we are in control of our thoughts and our bodies, that gives us true power. It's so empowering to not be reactionary and to not allow others to control your emotions. That's true power. Kids always want to be independent or things like that. And the question is, are we really teaching them to be independent? Because to be independent, you have to be mentally independent in terms of your thoughts and your feelings. And it doesn't mean you're not going to have ups and downs, but it means that at least you understand, as she said, when you're having those ups and downs. And I feel like so many of our youth do not have control of their thoughts, and they do not understand at all why they are feeling the way that they are. And that, of course, is multifactorial. But hopefully, if we can get our children to do mindfulness exercises, you can use an app, you can Google it. It's all over the place, to be honest with you. And there's even, for anxiety, there's a workbook called Coping Cat. And it's a CBT course, which is a little bit different, cognitive behavioral therapy. But what cognitive behavioral therapy does is it makes you take a negative thought and helps you to reimagine that thought. And so it takes negative thoughts and reimagining, similar to what mindfulness is doing. So I often recommend that book for people who have anxiety in addition to their mindfulness exercises. And when you combine the two, you get such great outcomes for many of these children who take it seriously. And of course, it's not easy to always be positive in this day and age. However, think about the lesson burden on your body, right? Negative people and negative situations take a toll on our stress and our cortisol levels, which lead to high blood pressure, diabetes, mental health issues, etc. Right? So when we are actually teaching our children these things, we're setting up their future for like true success. And it doesn't mean they're going to listen to everything that you have to say, but hopefully they have some tools there and they can actually utilize them later. Because I will say that I'm sure sometimes our parents were like, didn't we teach you better? And we're like, oh, you did teach me that. It'll come, it'll come. And I'm sure now they're like, finally, it's stuck. They're better understanding their brains, their thoughts, their feelings, and how to control them. But we have to remember that our children and adolescents' brains aren't fully developed, right? So we have to allow those connections, that gray matter to form in order for them to actually fully understand. However, the routine is beneficial no matter if they understand it or not. So we definitely want you to start implementing some of those other things. So, when you think of resiliency, what comes to mind?
So immediately, courage. When I think of a resilient mind, it's a mind or a resilient person, I should say. It's someone who has been through things and bounced back. Like you were talking about earlier, a rubber band. You want to be a rubber band that can last over time, because life is like this. Things are constantly happening. We do not have control of anything that really happens outside of ourselves. So the more we build up our ability to bounce back, the more resilient we are. But because of how we're built as humans, or probably just being mammals, period, we are risk averse. We don't like to experience difficulty or discomfort. But the more that things that are uncomfortable or that we didn't plan for happen, and the more that we do these self-care types of routines to come back into a more grounded place, or the more we can flip situations that we're going down these negative paths and flip it into something that is more positive and more beneficial for us, the more we're building up that part of ourselves that is able to bounce back from difficult situations, as well as not be so risk adverse. Suffering as a part of the human experience. It's not bad. We've labeled it as bad. But think about that little plant, that little seed that has to break out of its shell and then push all the way up through the dirt like a oak tree seed. Look how big they get once they finally break through that surface and develop that root system. Do you think that wasn't difficult to do? It's very difficult to do. But however, all it knows to do is to continue to grow. However, we, for some reason, get comfortable and we like that comfort, and we forget that no, growth, sometimes we have to overcome a lot of obstacles and a lot of difficulties. And guess what? It's okay.
Yes, thank you so much. I love your description. And I'll just add to that. That is why, as parents, we have to allow our children to make mistakes, to go through some difficulties. Sometimes I see people trying to make everything so perfect, and then the children have never had to deal with anything. And so when that encounter comes along, they don't know what to do and they don't have those coping skills. We joke all the time because we have boys, and my husband, we have a boxing bag, all this stuff. And I'm like, why would you do that? They said, because at some point, somebody may try to fight them. And I don't want that to be the first time they've ever tried to fight. I say, you know what? That's true. Right. So then we put them in self-defense classes as well, because the reality is that we have to prepare these children and give them skills and tools so that when they actually interact or have these situations, for instance, we kind of joke about it. We'll joke with each other, fun things, as family. It's four of us. So as girls, we always were doing that. But that helped me even now, right? I'll have a parent come in And maybe they don't like what I said, but I'm so used to have had these conversations where I know how to get myself out of them. I know how to not upset somebody, etc., because I've had those encounters. But if I didn't have those encounters, then they could crush me and they could make me not want to do my job. And I see that as an employer as well, is that I'll have employees who it's like you try to correct or critique and their whole world falls apart because no one's ever critiqued them. And you're like, what type of household did you grow up in? Our parents critiqued us lovingly, right? Just as we try to do it in the job space. I'm going to give you constructive criticism. But some people have never really experienced criticism. And so we're not helping them to be resilient because at some point we have to say, you know what, that outfit doesn't look appropriate. Maybe we should change it. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation versus you just holding your tongue like, oh my God, I hate this outfit because I don't want to say anything negative ever to my child. And there are definitely lots of ways to express, but we should have more conversations and have more dialogue, but also equip our children with just a few more skills and allow them to not be perfect. And then when things aren't perfect, what did you learn from this? I love when my son doesn't win his races for track. I love it. And he's like, now he's to the point he's where he is actually like, oh, I did great. I beat my other time. I did this. This is what I learned from it, etc. And so now he's just excelling and excelling and excelling instead of being super nervous because he didn't get first place. And that is the type of resiliency that we want to build into our children because that's going to really, really help them to be successful.
Right.
And as we kind of wrap up, what are some final words that you would like to leave with our audience?
That each of us are here for a purpose. We all have purpose to even be here. When we talk from a scientific perspective, it's almost a miracle when you look at the numbers for everything to come together for us to exist. So always remember that each and every one of us has a purpose, has a reason for why we are here. And knowing that, be grounded in that and always be like have a relationship with yourself first. That's the most important relationship because if you don't know yourself, how are you going to know how to interact with others? If you don't love yourself, how are you going to love anybody else? Be understanding I'm here for a reason. I have a purpose, so I have a why. You might not necessarily know exactly what that is. And the reason why is because this process of this life process is this process of kind of understanding that purpose. Some people look like they may have it all figured out. That's awesome. That's their path. You have your own path. Authenticity, be you, show up and be you because you are so unique. There's only one you and you're so unique. You do not need to be worried about being like anybody else. You need to figure out who is it that I am? What is my purpose? And show up and do that. So being authentic, showing up and being you, this is what the world needs. We don't need another one of me. We don't need another one of her, as awesome as we may be. We need you. And in order to do that, you have to do a lot of self-navigation, self-investigation, being quiet, just being, a lot of breathing. Use all these resources to help keep you constantly grounded in that purpose and in that underlying knowing that I'm supposed to be here. I'm amazing. I'm worthy to be here. Mm-hmm. And I have something to give. That would be my message.
I love it. Wonderful, wonderful last words. Thank you so much, Aquilah, for joining me. And we'll have to have you back sometime soon.
I would love it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.